has now been around for 3 seasons, and coaches everywhere are saving time and being more efficient when it comes to scout cards. Coach Robinson from Texas says, "The thing I most enjoy is the ease of access to all the scout cards and how I can draw on them if I need to make any changes. Every coach that uses it says that it is so great to use. If you and your staff are tired of the old ways of preparing and using scout cards, check out thecoachpad.com to start enjoying Scout Team and making the 2023 season better than ever."
Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Today we have the head football coach at Tonopah Valley High School in Arizona, Brett Davis. How you doing, Coach?
I'm doing good, Nicholas. Good to see you.
Well, I mean, we got shame it, and to your point, like we started to get into it just on the background stuff. That was a lot of good stuff, and we'll get to that here in a second. But how did you end up as the head football coach at Tonopah?
Well, it's an interesting journey. I was the head coach at Coachella Valley High School for 7-8 years, and then when COVID hit, we didn't know if we were going to get to play another season, 2020, and that was actually the best team I ever had. That was a state championship team, and my wife had an employment opportunity. We came back this way, but so that was how made it back to Tonopah. So and it's been a great experience. We won first region championship in school history, first playoff win in school history. We were the number one passing team in the state of Arizona, pretty high nationally. So, and we did it with 2 quarterbacks too. So that was pretty cool.
Now, before we get into where you offensively are now, because you've evolved the run and shoot to adapt to the various issues on defense, which we'll talk about in a minute. But how did you initially get into the original run and shoot?
I was introduced to it very early in my coaching career in California in 2003. And, like we talked about it at the time, when I was coaching in Ventura County, there was actually quite a few run and shoot guys around. And so kind of branching out and kind of learning from those guys. In fact, Brian Smith, who was OC with Nick Rolovich, and he was at Hawaii and Washington State. He's at University of Ohio right now.
He's at my alma mater.
Yeah, him and my wife were classmates in school and neighbors and all that. So, like I said, there was a lot of run and shoot guys around the Ventura County area. So there was a lot of great information. My shout out to my good buddy Charlie Weger and at Agora High School, who a big influence on me and was a big run and shoot guy. Played for Mouse at Northridge State, but so over time, like I said, I was running all the pure stuff right away. Goes, choice, switch, all that cool stuff. And then of course, we kind of got into the pattern match situation. Pattern match defenses kind of posed a big issue for us. There were some answers, yes, but they weren't. It wasn't anything we could sink our teeth into. And other run and shoot coaches around, we would always talk, and we weren't getting the return on investment for the time to practice that live seam throw and go. You weren't getting that choice route. You weren't, the things that made the run and shoot, the original pure run and shoot, so attractive was guys getting open, big throwing windows, and you'd be able to get the ball out quickly. Well, the pattern matches were taking those quick, big throws away. And so we kind of started adapting over time. And where I went to find those answers was, to kind of in the paths of the run and shoot and offshoots like John Jenkins and Archie Cooley with the Satellite Express at Mississippi Valley State. And those guys were where the old run and shoot was more condensed slot formations. We started spreading it out like John Jenkins did, going no huddle and then 4 to a side and going more 4 strong like the Satellite Express did. And have Jerry Rice on the single side. We didn't have Jerry, of course, but but those guys are attracted to that kind of stuff. And we started going no huddle and then giving everybody route conversions. That posed a lot of problems for defensive coaches, and utilizing the back, which is what the old run and shoot did not do really much at all.
Right.
And that's where we would get the 4 strong. We would use the running back.
Now, before you continue into what you've done, like back in the archaic day of spot drop and just the archaic days, like one, just out of curiosity, what was your favorite old school run and shoot concept that you enjoyed running?
Oh, go. It was go all day.
You're not
that was, I know probably a lot of run and shoot guys. Oh, of course. Like, no, it really was. I mean, if you saw cover 3 or man, I mean, you were just shredding those dudes all day, and it didn't matter what form of man they ran, it didn't matter, you'd shred them. And even like cover 2, you could shred that pretty good too. Yeah. So that originally that was good. And switch will always, and we still run switch very pure, and out of 2x2, and that one will stand the test of time. That's another, but those were the 2 bad boys. But go was the big dog.
You're not the first run and shoot person I've had tell that to me. Like,
yeah,
I think every run and shoot person I've had on, that's one of the key questions I ask is like, what is your favorite?
Yeah,
like run and shoot concept to run. That's
and see what got most guys out, like some of my old buddies that were just, played in the run and shoot, were all run and shoot. They probably had it tattooed on their body that I don't know about. Those guys, when they couldn't run go anymore, they're like, I'm not running the offense, because that was the play when we're talking about Hawaii, right? Well, when we watched it, that was you're seeing that ball out in under 2 seconds, whether it was Timmy Chang or whether it was Colt Brennan or my boy Waylon that was over there would be a backup for Colt Brennan and any of those, even Rolovich himself when he played for him. That was, you'd watch those guys, and no matter who was in there, you could pat, go right, left, right, ball, boom, and that thing was out. And that was like, wow, and you just see that execution. But again, over time, we weren't getting the return on investment because that play took a lot, especially at a high school level, when we have guys that really didn't even know how to run, and they couldn't run in a straight line. They didn't know how to move their arms when they ran. Guys learning how to catch a ball and move in space and stuff like that. That took a lot of time to get down. So you weren't getting that return on investment anymore.
Now,
and so a lot just got out of it.
Yes. Or they meshed it with their version of the air raid.
Right.
And stay spread, but they mixed it in. Now, before we get into, again, your stuff and how you evolved it, how much does this cause practice to change for you? Like, is there anything like that you've had to majorly change practice-wise for your offense?
Yeah. So if you're talking about my version of the run shoot, so what we now focus on a lot more than what we did back in those days, where we would run the concepts together a lot more. And where now we focus on a lot of drills where we go over, we have a lot of routes on barrels where we go over every read route, and we have barrels or extra coaches or whoever that represent defenders. And we really rep the hell out of these read routes. And in fact, in the spring, like when we do our first installs now, I won't put in a single concept until we have mastered the read routes. So we really focus a lot more on that, and the quarterback's drops and the timing of it, his footwork, until all that melds and meshes in together, we won't run a damn concept. So that's where it's changed a little bit, where when you're going go, you got to run go.
Yeah.
You got to get in there together and to run it, and so that's, I think that would be the biggest change, I would say.
Okay. Now let's get into it. I mean, and we talked a little bit about it beforehand, both through messaging and through the first couple minutes. Like you've morphed this, and part of it, a lot of it is the necessity of what defenses are giving you now with pattern matching. Pattern matching has caused offensive coaches to adjust, just like RPOs have caused defenses to adjust. But I mean, you've morphed into more of a quads or a 4-strong, where it's trips with the running back to the side. You want to kind of talk about that evolution of, okay, we got pattern match. This is how I'm going to evolve, and this is what we're going to.
Yeah. So one thing I learned from, a lot of defensive coaches was defensive coaches safety. They like it when they can get 4/3, 3/2, and still have a +1 advantage in the box, right? That's where they're safe. They feel nice and comfy and cozy in that world. And the reality of it is most offensive coordinators turn on the electric blanket for them and let them be comfortable with it. Well, I'm not going to do that. So I kind of like making them uncomfortable. Now getting 5/4, and sometimes they have to get 6/4 to a side, and then stay 2/1 to the single side can pose a lot of problems. And we also are able to run the ball out of our quad stuff as well. So, and now that makes it a lot tougher to keep all those that +1 integrity in all areas of the field. It makes it a lot more difficult. And we found that out again, and that came from defensive coaches. And then when you start running it, you're like, oh yeah, I can see that,
So with that, conceptually, like, okay, obviously you're essentially running a quads run and shoot. I'll phrase it that way. I
Sure.
think you call it what, the 44 shoot offense?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I mean, conceptually, did you alter current concepts or did you create new concepts with that?
Yeah. So in a way, we kind of just melded a few together. So like choice, divide, and then some aspects of switch and stuff were just kind of, all kind of melded together into it, and then a little bit of white cross action that we kind of took from the air raid, and then we kind of melded all that together into it. And again, and we go very fast. Again, we don't huddle up. We're no huddle, and we go pretty fast again. And I think the guys that have had statistically the most success in the run and shoot are guys that kind of done that.
Okay. And then so like when you're like, obviously it's a little different because all your routes are read routes, but how do you approach a defense in your offense week to week, given what you do?
Well, I'll tell you, we don't ever see what we see on film. So the biggest thing that we practice are the rules.
Yeah.
We have our rules and our reads, because if we look on film, whatever we see on film, I promise, even if we have a quads look on a film or a 3x1 on film, that is not what we are going to get. So the only thing we really watch film for is personnel, really, is to get a personnel feel and see how they attack protections. That's kind of what we want to. That's what we want to see. And we like to see techniques that their middle linebacker will use to get, or who we identify as the Mike. What they'll do with the number 3 vertical. Okay, how they handle 3 vertical. And again, not 100% of the time do we get that full picture, but that's what we're trying to decipher when we watch film, and that's about it. That's all we can take from it. But as far as the defensive structure altogether, I mean, we've had 3-3 stack teams that never break the stack and are always one high, come out in 2 2s, 2 5s, and try to play quarters on us, and then they've never shown that once. With a lot of spread film that we would get on them. So we've had that over the years. So we learned to adjust, and we just have our rules.
Okay. So I mean, is that kind of, I mean, going back to this, is that kind of, okay, so we're getting pattern match. I mean, we all know what the standard trips adjustments are. It's usually special or solo, where I mean, some four of quarters or 2 read trips adjustment, or you get one of the Ripple is adjustments where it's really just cover 3, but who your three vertical guy is changes, and how they deal with crossers change. So with that, are you mainly looking for who the 3 across player? How are you? Let me rephrase this. How are you attacking that 3 vertical player?
Well, we read him. So, I mean, that's the big thing. And then we convert off of what he does.
Okay. And then
so if he's poaching, if he's poaching, we have a break. If he spins to the middle, we have a certain thing. If they go to true cover 2, we have a conversion for that. And we don't convert until we clear that who we call the mic. So if he short walls, number 3 vertical, but then we'll have an answer. So we usually, if he's posing a problem for us, and he usually won't. So usually if they just short wall poach, we'll still have a space. And usually if they start involving and push coverage, usually getting that will involved as the long wall in number 3. Now we got a 3-for-1, which is, I mean, that's an offensive coordinator's dream right there. Is now we got a 3-for-1 on a route, and now we can start involving, we can change where the back goes and stuff like that, depending on how they handle that. And that's really all we do. We just change where he goes.
Okay. And then
so coordinator, when I'm calling, that's if we're getting that 3-for-1, now I might not go more 4 strong. I might go 2 weak. I might send the back on a shallow or something like that, and kind of work with that a little bit.
Okay. And then, so obviously you get the back very involved in your offense, whereas they don't. How do you get your back involved in the offense? Like you obviously either line up in quads or 4 strong, but more specifically, how are you getting your back involved?
Well, he like you say, we either are swinging him, you're running him in the flat. He doesn't have a lot of routes. We'll put him opposite side, run a burst route with him. We'll, and then if he's actually, depending on certain calls, now we might put him, we'll move him around to different spots in the slot, and his route won't change, but now we're threatening that flat defender. We're stressing him a little differently now. So especially if we want to work that, if we want to stress their flat defender a little more, now we might move him around out a little wider. We put him in different spots and just have him run bubbles out there. And then if nobody covers him, we just throw him the ball out there. We always want him to be one of our best guys, because obviously he's closer to the quarterback. You're going to want him. He's going to touch the ball more than anybody. So you want him to be a good guy that can catch the ball and go boogie with it. But, that's kind of, but we keep it really simple. We don't give him 100 things that he does. There's only about 4 or 5 routes that he runs.
Okay. And then, so I'm trying to think how
sometimes we'll put him at 4 and make him vertical.
Okay.
And that poses some issues too, because how many defenses have a 4 vertical rule?
Not many. If
Not
any
many.
at all. Yeah. Unless they know to prep for it.
Right.
Yeah.
But how good are you going to be with it?
Yes.
How good are you going to be running it in a week?
Correct. I mean, with this, like, let's do me a favor. Like, what does a typical practice look like for you?
Well, and not a lot of different than a regular run and shoot team. But we come out every day. We ball drill every day. We practice catching the ball at all the different angles that we want. So we do our ball drills, and then we come out and we'll have certain of those read routes that we practice every day in a very structured way. Do 10-minute segments doing each one of those, and then sometimes we'll even focus on maybe working switch as a drill together and doing all that, then getting into 7-on-7. Then we'll have screen periods and inside run every once in a while. We don't have a lot of run plays, but our run, it's just, we have the old Tampa trap play that Yeah, that most of that you'd see at Hawaii all the time, and then a little draw play. We don't have a whole bunch of plays, run plays, so we don't have to practice them a ton. Sometimes we just get them in team, and then we go team, and in team we want to practice. I got this from June. We're going to throw the ball 95% of the time in team, because the primary thing is we want the quarterback to feel a little pressure on him and stuff like that, and then we work throwing the ball down the field a lot in that.
Now,
and we just rep the hell out of everything.
Now, I'm trying to think how to word this. How do you get good looks coverage wise for what you do? Like in practice, like so obviously you're running your offense and you don't necessarily know what coverage wise you're going to get, but
Yeah.
you've run this long enough to kind of get an idea. But how do you get a scout team to replicate that? Because I mean, instead of them just trying, I mean, you don't want them just play man the whole dang time, and like barrels can only do so much, as you know. So how do you try to replicate that?
What we'll do is we'll tell them, like, that's why I say early on, like, we'll practice every play, but maybe in a day we'll focus on a certain defense and certain techniques that they might run. So like we might work spot dropping, we might work walling technique, and we just tell the guy what we want him to do. And then certain techniques that maybe a curl flat player might use. Aggressive to the flat, squared, aggressive to the flat, maybe where he's turning and running with a vertical release of number 2 or 3, stuff like that. And we'll give them, and then maybe push technique. We'll tell these guys to push, and we'll have it drawn up, and coaches tell them, how exactly we want the under coverage guys. So if we're working a quarters day, we'll really focus on what the under coverage guys techniques are on those days. And we just tell them what to do. We don't have to have, or we'll have coaches do it. Hell, and I'm not afraid. I'll jump out there and I'll be the mic. I say, well, I'll give you the damn look I want. So we do it. We have several different ways that we can do that. But like I said, and focusing on one thing a lot of times in the day, especially early on when you're installing it, that's kind of the best thing to do.
Okay. And then building off that, like, obviously that's where you want to go. You mentioned also screen period. How much involved are you with screens? Obviously that's not the basis of the offense, but I mean,
oh no, we run a ton of screens.
Good.
Oh, we run a ton of screens. I mean, I'll throw a screen. I throw a screen to a cheerleader if they let me. I mean, because that's kind of part of our running game too.
Yes.
Because we want them to keep those under coverage players as tight to the line of scrimmage as we like. We're trying to create as much second and third level spacing as we can. So because that's what we'll get in a lot of games. It makes it so easy. The under coverage guys are tight to the line of scrimmage to stop a lot of our screens. And it's not just perimeter. We have all different kinds of screens that we run. And then try to get their secondary guys playing a lot deeper. So we got that nice second, third level space. We're trying to look for 8 to 9 yard gaps between the under coverage and the secondary. So, we got these nice big windows to sit in. And then if they don't, if their second and third level players play tight to each other, which a lot of pattern matching, that was another pattern matching teams were very good at that. Taking those second, third level windows away, or not away necessarily, but making them tight.
Yes.
We're getting those windows like we used to, but now you got that check down out there. Fine. If they do that, check down to touchdown. I mean, that's what we say. Check down to touchdown.
Okay. Now I also want to go back. You kind of mentioned earlier that a lot of your quarterback. How much of your quarterback stuff has actually changed or the same? Is the drop still the same in your offense?
Pretty much.
Like, I mean, is there any changes? Actually, can you just like break down for people who don't know how a quarterback typically drops in a run and shoot offense for maybe one of my viewers who may not know? Or
so typically in today, especially in the shotgun world, most quarterbacks launch points are going to be inside leg of the tackle, outside leg of the guard, somewhere in there. Now the old run and shoot where you were under center, they were out like rolling, but in the shotgun, it's more of the half roll.
Yep.
So that's what and we still use a lot of that. I like that because it shortens the distance between the quarterback and his target, which I really like. And it changes the launch point for the quarterback, which is tougher on pass rushers. Because they're taught to get to certain spots. They think the quarterback's going to be in a certain place, and he's not. He's very rarely going to be there. So the launch point is always different for the quarterback, which is what I like. So that's why that part's, and that's where the run and shoot gets its name. It's not because you run the ball sometimes and throw the ball. That's not where the run and shoot came from. It came from the movement of the quarterback.
Now with that, just out of curiosity, because I obviously have not run the run and shoot at high school level, but does it change how people rush you or try to attack your quarterback based off how you drop?
Yes. Well, the screens actually have more influence over the pass rush stuff that we found, because we will screen on any down and distance, anytime and anywhere. And not, like I said, not just tunnel and bubble screen. I'm talking delay screen. We have a lot of different delay screens that we'll use, and we'll run them anywhere. So that poses an issue for, you can't come on these hard rushes. So that influences pass rushing a lot more, but definitely, and we found like another thing, not only pattern matches is a new issue, especially for air raid guys are having issues with the tight front 3 safety high stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's really big out here. The run and shoot is great for that because it allows, with that half roll, now we can kind of get that 7-on-7 vision that we want out there. So a lot of times now, guys that want to stay in that tight front 2-4 eyes now, in certain areas, now they have to kick those guys out to 5s. Because now we can just kind of get out. So that poses a lot of issues for tight front teams too.
Okay. And I want to go back to something you talked earlier, because you said switch has not changed and switch is still pure. And I wrote that down here is, can you and I've read on switch, I've watched switch, I've watched people talk about switch, but how do you teach your kids switch, if I may ask?
Okay, so you're talking about from the receiver standpoint?
Yes.
Okay. So our seam read, when he releases, he's releasing on the upfield shoulder of the first defender inside the corner. I know that sounds like a lot. We have to say it like that because that's a different guy nowadays a lot. You could just say the outside linebacker if you want, but it's the first defender inside you. You're aiming, and it's a gradual move. So, because a lot of times his landmark is still that weak side hash, that boundary hash, right? So that's still going to be his landmark, but we don't want to just run right to it, because the kid, if you try to run under that linebacker, he's going to get lit up and all that stuff like that. So we gradually, our aim and point is at that upfield shoulder. And then once we clear that, now we start working to our landmark and just read the safety. And again, you got all your seam read rules, and maybe another day could come on and talk about seam reads, but and I'm sure that's pretty easy information you can go find on how to run a seam read. But if it's cover 3, we're just going to read that middle field safety. If he rotates away, we're taking it up for a touch. If he stays in the middle, works towards us, we're sitting in the hole. If it's too deep, goes to cover 2. We're gonna widen to his face, skinny it up for a touchdown. And if he stays quarters, then we'll sit it down and find a hole back to the quarterback. If it's man, we'll snap it across and get slightly downhill and move away. And then we have our streak read coming right off the outside leg of that seam read runner. And then he's going to get up and just read the leverage of the corner. If I'm even, I'm leaving. If not, if I can't get by him, I'll throw my hand up and sit it down. And that's the one we actually get completed the most. And our read is really easy. So we're eyes on our first step, eyes opposite the field. I say, pick out the prettiest girl in the stand, stare at her on your first step, use your eyes, move defenders, second step, as we cross over with our second step, eyes now get to the seam read, and we're reading seam to outside. Real easy read.
Okay. That's perfect, Coach.
I mean, it's simple. And we say, don't throw that seam read unless he's wide ass open. If he's wide ass open, give him the ball. If not, that streak read always will be.
No, that's perfect. Now, I mean, one of the last thing I'm not going to ask, like, do you still, how do I want to phrase this? Because I got to be careful here. I'm not going to ask you to explain it to me, but do you run like the pure run and shoot pass protection, or do you see? I know that, not to have you explain it though, or if you morphed into something else. I know better.
Yeah, no. We don't run. We've had to change a little bit, obviously, because we use a lot of 5-man protection. So we couldn't use a ton of those old 0, 1-man, 2, all that stuff rule. So we've had to adapt that a little bit.
Yeah, I know better. Like you.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that, like, growing up, they do not let you talk about. You can talk divide choice all you want. You do not talk pass protection. Like that's how you get hurt.
That's tight lip, man. You had to go all over the place to get someone to, that was worse than Watergate. That was like deep throat, guys in trench coats. I'll meet you at 2:00 in the parking garage, by Vinny's Deli. Yeah.
It's like the slot T people in Texas. It's the same concept. Like,
yeah.
Run and shoot people. We'll teach you choice. We'll teach you divide. We will not teach you pass protection. No. Like, or like I've had people like, I won't Zoom with you. You can call me. Like, yeah. I'm not drawing anything up on a whiteboard that can be taking pictures, recorded. Ain't doing any of that stuff. That's whoo.
Well, because that's what the coordinators are looking for. That they want to attack the protection. So
yeah. Hold on, no, trust me, I get it. Like, but yeah, it is a. Like I've had friends or people I've done with this, like, I mean, and start talking about it and be like, and freeze and stop and just like, So,
wait for that recording button to shut off, and then we'll
yeah, but here's the thing, like, I have this recording button, but I used to have old software I could record. I didn't record through Zoom. I had a separate thing I recorded with, so you would never know if something's get recorded. So that's why people are so careful nowadays. And I don't blame them. I mean, just kind of going back to it, because, like, I mean, like, you've seen the evolution of the offense. I mean, you've coached for 21 years. Obviously, Hawaii's in the process of running again with Coach Chang. Rollo's currently out of football. Stutzman is now at Texas State as a pass game coordinator. June is the offensive coordinator in the XFL. So there's still some semblance of it, but I mean, and like, you can make the argument Art Briles modified his pass game from the run and shoot. A lot of those outside choice concepts are there. How do you, like, and then obviously you've modified it to where you run the 44 and you're running a lot of 4 strong stuff or quad stuff and running a little different concepts, but the basis is still there with how the reads and meshing stuff. How do you see, like, A, it continue to maintain and evolve, but B, people adjusting to it?
Well, that's what I love about it so much it's kind of, it's a piece of wet clay kind of offense. It doesn't have a genetic link to any other offense there is. Where the air raid is just a cousin of the BYU offense, which is a cousin of the Sid Gilman offense and Don Coryell, which that's what created the West Coast offense and down the road. So they're all genetically linked together. RPOs are nothing new. Hell, my dad in 1976, when he was starting quarterback at San Diego State, said we were running RPOs way back then. We just didn't have a name for it. We'd have zone right call. And if I had Ronnie Smith, and we had the slant wide open, we would just raise up and throw a slant, but we just didn't have a name for it. So those things are old. They've been around a long time. The run and shoot is kind of, it's its own entity. It's an immaculate conception off. It doesn't have a link. Tiger Ellison got it watching kids playing in the park. So that's the great thing. It's so wide open. It can evolve, and it can keep evolving. And I think as coaches look for more and more answers, because the defensive coaches, I hate to say, are a lot smarter than offensive coaches. They really are. The smartest, the guys I respect the most, I just go, these guys are football brilliance. They're doctors in football. They're all defensive guys. Saban being one of them. Everybody goes crazy because he wins national championships at Alabama. I hate to tell you, he broke the record from a guy coaching at Alabama. So, that's nothing new. But everything we do defensively comes from his mind, especially in a coverage aspect. And guys like Doug, I think the smartest guys are defensive guys. So the answers, I think, need to come from, these more of a, what shall we say, more unique offense, less rigid, a more flexible offense. And that's what I love about the run and shoot. It could be anything you want it to be. And that's really what I love it. Like you said, Art Briles, if you watched him, no one would know, if you were a purist, how's that run and shoot? Well, it is. Like you said, if you know what he's doing, it is.
Yeah.
It may not look like it to the naked eye, but it is. And when I see anybody convert a route and sit in space or do something, you could tell when they do it. Notre Dame did it in their game the other night on the biggest play of the game. I know that guy wasn't told to do that. He just converted that route into space. There was a third down play down there near the red zone. They were 3rd and long, and he just sat in that hole and ball got to him. When you see guys do that, you see that's all run and shoot stuff. And it can be anything we want it to be.
Okay. Now, the last thing we'll have you do is, if people want, because your offense has been successful in a couple states. You've obviously had a lot of success with it. You've taught people your offense. How can people find out more information on your variation of the run and shoot, the 44?
Just hit me up. I'm the only one that kind of has that part of it, but you DM me. You can DM me on Twitter. I love to help guys out. Mouse has kind of learned that from him. He's a guy you could call him up at 2 a.m. right now, and he'd probably take your call if he could. So I'll always give back. If you want to know anything, just find me on Twitter, and I'd have to look it's bad because I don't know my Twitter handle.
Oh, you're fine. It'll be in I'll have it all in the bio for you. I'll have it all in there. It'll be good.
I don't know what is off the top of my head. But yeah, if anybody wants to learn more, hit me up. I love to talk ball and especially run and shoot and route conversion, stuff like that. So I'd love to help out anybody who's willing to learn.
Well, coaches, give Coach a follow. His Twitter will be in the bio if you want to learn more. Just reach out to him. Like I said, Coach followed me, literally the other day, and we set this up, and Coach is pretty available. And like I said, we talked a little bit before, and then I'll probably talk to him a little bit afterwards. But like, share, subscribe, all that lovely stuff so people can find it. And then check out our sponsor, Coachpad. Otherwise, that's another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast.